Romans chapter 11 and verse 7. What then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. When it says Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, it's using Israel there to refer to unbelieving Israel. When it says the election hath obtained it, it's talking about believing Israel. Look with me at Romans 3:19. Romans chapter 3 and verse 19. Now we know that what things soever the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. What the law does is designed to shut people up, and it's designed to declare them guilty. Therefore, by the deeds of the law there shall no flesh be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. And the idea there is simply this. Anyone that lives under the law system should quickly come to the realization that they're a sinner. If you read, let's just say you read the Ten Commandments. Do you read the Ten Commandments and feel good about yourself? Well, you shouldn't, because among the things it says is thou shalt not bear false witness. Have you ever borne false witness? Yeah. It says thou shalt not covet. Have you ever coveted anything? And of course the answer is yes. You can't read the law and come away thinking, I'm good. You can't do that. Get with me Galatians 3 verse 24. Or at least you shouldn't do that. Galatians chapter 3 and verse 24. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. Now, recall when we were in Romans 3:20, what does the law give you the knowledge of? For by the law is the knowledge of sin. Well, if the law is our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, what the law does is it teaches someone under the law, it says, you're a sinner. And in teaching that, what it's teaching is, if you think you can be justified by keeping the law, you can't. You need Christ. Now notice with me, get Romans 9 verse 31. Romans chapter 9 and verse 31. But Israel, which followed after the law of righteousness. So did Israel possess the Old Testament law? The answer to that is obviously yes. But Israel, which followed after the law of righteousness, hath not attained to the law of righteousness. Israel somehow, while following the law, they didn't attain to the righteousness. Why is that? Verse 32. Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. So Israel had the law, and what did they do? Well, we just got to keep it better. I'll try harder tomorrow, and I'll do better the next day after that. Does the law teach you that if you just keep trying harder, and you just keep trying harder, you're going to get it? Is that what the law teaches? No, it's the opposite of that. The law is a schoolmaster to bring people to Christ. It's like beating your head against a cement wall. After the first 12 times, what should you do? Quit, right? I'm going to try to keep the law today. I'm going to try to keep the law today. I'm going to try to keep the law today. What is the lesson you should take away? I failed. And then I failed. Then I really failed. And I failed again. You should learn the lesson, I can't be justified by the law. But what Romans 9:32 says here, look at this. Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. So they just kept going and going and going and going. And in fact, didn't the Pharisees add additional provisions to the law beyond what were in the law? Was that the weakness of the Old Testament law, that didn't have enough rules? It didn't have enough specifics, so man had to come along and add more. In other words, what these verses are saying is Israel missed the entire point. The entire point of the Old Testament law was to declare people guilty and therefore to abandon all hope in themselves of keeping the works of the law. It was a schoolmaster pointing them to who? Christ. That's the lesson they should have learned. Now read the end of verse 32. For they stumbled at that stumbling stone. As it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and rock of offense, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. Who is it that's the stumbling stone? Jesus Christ. The law was a schoolmaster pointing them to Christ, and they didn't seek it by faith. They stumbled at that stumbling stone. So what's going on here in Romans 11, verse 7? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for. Israel hasn't done that. Why? Because they stumbled at that stumbling stone. They did not learn the lesson that the Old Testament law was designed to teach them. The election, believing Israel, has obtained righteousness, but the rest of Israel, unbelieving Israel, were blinded, is what Romans 11 says. Look with me at Romans 11:25. Romans 11, verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. Now notice this, that blindness in part is happened to Israel. There's the Israel that's blinded and unbelieving, and then there's the remnant that is believing. So what happened is unbelieving Israel was blinded. Go back with me with Romans 11, verse 7. What then, Israel, that's unbelieving Israel, hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election, that's believing Israel, hath obtained it, and the rest, that's unbelieving Israel, were blinded. Get 2 Corinthians 3, verse 14. 2 Corinthians 3:14. But their minds were blinded. For until this day remaineth the same veil untaken away in the reading of the Old Testament, which veil is done away in Christ. But even unto this day, when Moses is read, the veil is upon their heart. So notice, verse 14 references their minds being blinded. Verse 15 references the veil being upon their heart. So the words heart and mind are used equivalently there. What it says here is when Moses is read, he's not understood because the veil is upon Israel's hearts, and that veil prevents Israel from seeing the truth. So here's what's going on. Imagine this. Moses gives the law. Israel can't keep it. Generation later. You know the problem today? People still think they can keep the Old Testament law. They sought it by works. The one thing that the law is designed to teach is you can't be saved by works. It's like reading a 1,000-page book and missing the entire point. Look at me at 2 Corinthians 4, verse 3. But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. Before we go to Romans 11:8, I'll make this point. What the world is full of, the world is full of different religions that each have their own system of works, that if you perform those system of works, you are now in a right relationship with God. And what that does, you can decide if this is true, this is my opinion. Satan has all of these different false religions, all of these different false gospels. And what that does is that gives man the ability to pick the one that most caters to his flesh. So search and search and search and find the one that most appeals to your prideful flesh and embrace that, and now you will have comfort and assurance in this false thing that appeals to your flesh. But the whole point of the Old Testament law, which the whole point of it was, you can't fulfill it by works. You just can't. And what you need to do is you need to learn the lesson of humility and say, God, I am a total failure in keeping your law, and so I'm going to trust what Christ did for me because there's nothing else I can do. There's no other viable option. And instead, what man keeps doing is running on the religious treadmill of works. And like the little hamster, he gets no closer to attaining to righteousness because it is impossible by works.